もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。私が本当に見ていたかったもの、それは葉山君が自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさん計算し合う風景なんだよ。葉山君はまだ子供なんだから、ゼミがなくなったことに責任なんか感じなくていいんだからね。
Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we're going to cover another anime line of the day. We're going to be taking a line from the show Shokugeki no Soma. This is going to be, in English, the show Food Wars. Pretty bad localized title if you ask me, but so our line is going to be from the 18th episode of the third season of this show, and it's going to be in English. I don't need a research lab anymore. There was something I wanted you to do more than trying to get the equipment, the budget, and all that stuff back. What I really wanted to see was you putting your heart into your cooking and enjoying devoting yourself to your craft with your fellow peers. And so yeah, this is, as you can probably tell, a pretty long line, or a couple of lines stacked into one that we're pushing into this whole lesson here, and there is a decent amount of context to it. I'm not too sure I can explain it if you are not a watcher of this show. The character Jun here is basically telling the person she's talking to, Hayama, that he doesn't need to keep trying to get back the research lab that they had. She just wanted to see him enjoying learning cooking with his fellow friends. That's basically the context there. So this is a loaded lesson. Hopefully we're going to learn a lot from this, and I don't know what to do other than to just jump into the first line of this. So once again, もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。
もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。
So this is the first line. Of course, we're going to try to go at this one line at a time to make it easier. This first line right here, once again, is going to translate to I don't need a research lab anymore. There was something I wanted you to do more than trying to get the equipment, the budget, and all that stuff back. So first up, we start with the word mo. This is a particle. Usually we translate it to already, but it has a nuance in how it's used in the Japanese. It's not always going to directly translate to already. Here it's at the start of the sentence, and because of the context of the situation, it's basically just used to go like, gosh, enough already, don't you understand? Something along those lines. In our natural translation, as you can see, it's probably going to give the translation the word anymore, and that's kind of a similar meaning to already, because you know, it expresses that we're now at a state where we don't need it anymore. I'm already at the state of not needing it anymore. Something along those lines. Next up, we have the word kenkyuubasho, which is going to translate to basically research place. Kenkyu, which means research, and basho means place. We'll naturalize that into like research lab. Following that is the word nante, which is a kind of loaded topic, kind of a grammar pattern in and of itself. Commonly, we say that this is used to say, to kind of like vagify the word that it's used after, in this case, kenkyuubasho, and it kind of, as opposed to just saying kenkyuubasho, which means research place, it turns into like things like a research place or such as a research place. On the other hand, it is also commonly just kind of generalized to mean an emphasis. It emphasizes the research place. Here, it's actually probably going to be the latter. It's just emphasizing the research place as something that she doesn't need anymore. So as we move on, we'll see that the rest of the sentence fulfills that statement of not needing. We have Watashi, which means I, of course, the wa marking me as the topic, the I as the topic, and then iranai is the negative nai form of the verb iru, which means to need. So negative nai form, of course, will turn that into not need. Then we have the sentence ending particle yo to add this kind of like explanatory tone. So altogether, this first sentence in this first line, もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ, and this will translate to I don't need a research lab anymore.
もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。
Let's move on to the second sentence. 機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山くんにはしてほしかったことがあるから。
機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。
Because there was something I wanted you, Hayama-kun, to do more than getting the equipment and the budget and all that stuff back, or yeah. So we start off with the word Kizai, which is going to translate to equipment. We have the particle ya to mean basically and. You use it with nouns when you want to basically list nouns. So since we're doing that, of course, another noun is now going to appear, which is yosan, which is going to translate to budget. So Kizai ya yosan is going to mean equipment and budget. We're going to mark both of those things with the direct object marker O because we want them to be the direct object of the verb that we're about to use, which is torimodosu, which means basically to take back. It's kind of a compound verb. Tori is toru, which means to take, and modosu means to basically return. So using them together as a compound type verb, it is to take back. We're going to nominalize that verb, torimodosu, by putting koto after this. So as opposed to take back, it'll turn into basically taking back. And so since it's a noun now, we can actually use it with the word that's going to appear after it, which is nanka, which is also a pretty hard topic that is pretty unique to the Japanese language to explain. And the interesting thing here is that it's kind of identical to the word that we used earlier, nante, in which they are very commonly interchangeable, but not always. I mentioned earlier that nante kind of has multiple uses. One common one was doing the vagifying thing, and then the second was just it's commonly used to just generalize in general. You can very commonly replace nante with nanka and it'll mean the same thing. In this case, it's probably going to be doing more of that first function of vagifying things, not so much emphasizing, because as opposed to emphasizing the act of taking back, she's kind of more like saying doing things like taking back, so kind of vagifying it there. Let's see if we can get a better idea of how that works as we continue on and complete the sentence. So we now have the particle yori, which is used to compare things. So in this case, it pretty much translates to then or more than. So more than things like taking back the equipment and budget, ... Now we finish the sentence and say what is more than that.
機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。
Hayama-kun, which is the name of the person she's talking to. The double particle ni and wa, shite hoshikatta koto ga aru kara. So shite is of course the te form of the verb suru, which is just the very general verb that means to do. It's being used in a grammar pattern here, which is the te form of a verb like we have here, used with hoshi, which means to want basically, and that will translate to basically to want someone else to do something for you basically. Te form of verb plus hoshi, want you to do that verb for me. However, it's going to be conjugated into its past plain form here, so hoshi turns into hoshikatta. So shite hoshikatta is going to be wanted you to do, and this here is then going to in turn being used as basically a clause to modify the noun right after it, which is the word koto, which will just generally translate to thing here. So shite hoshikatta koto is going to translate to thing I wanted you to do for me basically. And now we use the ga aru grammar pattern, a very simple one, which is just the existential expression of saying like there is. So yeah, there is something that I wanted you to do. And then we end the sentence with kara. This is the kara that means because, but it's being used not quite as a conjunction or at the beginning of the sentence. It's being used at the end of the sentence because in this conversation she just happens to be providing the reason after she has already provided the cause. Usually you do the opposite, but you know, when you're talking, you sometimes say things and you go, oh, I'm just going to follow up with this. It's not as organized as, say, written language. So there we have it. That's completing the first line. もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。I don't need a research lab anymore because there was something I wanted you to do more than trying to get the equipment and budget back. That's going to be our pretty naturalized translation of that.
もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。
Now let's move on to the second line in this big line. The first sentence in the second line is going to be 私が本当に見ていたかったもの。
私が本当に見ていたかったもの。
And this is gonna be a sentence that is actually, if you were to be kind of grammatically strict here, it's not a complete sentence because it's just the statement of a noun basically. There's no verb action that this noun is performing. So if we break it down, we have of course watashi at the beginning, which is I, the ga marking I as the subject. Hontoni is of course the adverb that means really. Then we have the verb miru here, which means to see. It's in its te form because it's going to be used with mite iru. It's going to be used with the grammar pattern that is the te form of verb plus iru to mean to be doing that verb, but here the iru is going to be conjugated into its desiderative tai form, which means want to do, so want to be doing, in turn going to be translated into the past ta form. So itakatta is going to be wanted to have been doing the verb. So mite itakatta is wanted to have been seeing basically. And so this whole thing that we have so far with watashi ga hontou ni mite itakatta is going to be a clause that's basically modifying the noun right after, which is mono, which means thing, very similar to koto. So if it's modifying mono, which means thing, the whole sentence right there is going to translate to thing that I really wanted to have been seeing basically.
私が本当に見ていたかったもの。
So yeah, you should see how this is actually not really a complete sentence yet because we're just stating the thing, but the thing isn't performing any action. So it's an unfulfilled sentence, and we'll see why with the next sentence that kind of refers to this one. And it reads very lengthily. それはHayama-kunが自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代の友達とたくさんkensanし合う風景なんだよ。
それは葉山くんが自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさん計算し合う風景なんだよ。
And so if our first line in this sentence, 私が本当に見ていたかったもの, translated to thing that I really wanted to have been seeing, then our second sentence here, which will kind of refer back to this one, will translate to something like that, and of course that refers to that thing that you really wanted to see, is the sight of you, Hayama-kun, putting your heart into your own cooking and enjoying devoting yourself to your craft with your fellow peers. So now let's jump into the actual Japanese and break it down. So it starts with, of course, sore, which means that. So, of course, it's referring to the sentence that we just covered before this. We have the particle wa marking as the topic. We have Hayama-kun, which is just his name again. The ga marking Hayama-kun as a subject that's going to perform some action. Then we have a noun of a noun modification here, jibun no ryouri. Jibun means, of course, yourself, oneself. Ryouri means basically food, cuisine. So jibun no ryouri is going to be your own food. In this case, we'll of course turn that into cooking. Now we're going to mark this noun of a noun modification with the direct object marker O because it's going to be the direct object to the verb. Before we have the verb show up, we're going to have the phrasing kokoro kara, and this is just going to mean from the heart. Kokoro means heart, and kara means from. And now we'll have the verb, we'll have tanoshimu, which means to enjoy, to have fun. It's going to mean its te form, so it turns into tanoshinde, which is then going to continue on the sentence.
それは葉山くんが自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさん計算し合う風景なんだよ。
We have another noun of a noun modification with dousedai, which is going to mean same generation. The second noun in that modification is otomodachi, which of course means friends. So dousedai no otomodachi is going to mean friends of the same generation, basically. To naturalize that, we're probably just going to say something like your fellow peers or your friends. After that, we have the particle to because we're marking them as with, so basically with your friends of the same generation. We have the adverb takusan said twice just because she's speaking, and in conversation you say words twice to emphasize them. Takusan of course means a lot or very much so or something along those lines. It is modifying the verb right after it, which is kensan shiau. Kensan means basically to devote yourself into your studies, to diligently study. It can be used as a verbal noun, so to use it as a verb, we just plug the general verb suru after it, so kensan suru. But we're going to change suru a bit. We want to express this idea of doing things together, so we change it into shiau, which means to do things together. So kensan shiau means basically to diligently study together. And so now what we're going to do is pretty crazy. Pretty much almost everything we covered so far in this sentence right after それは so that will be Hayama-kun が自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさんkensan shiau is going to be in this very long clause that's just going to be modifying the noun that appears next, which is fuukei, which means a sight. And so that whole thing together, Hayama-kun が自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさんkensan shiau fuukei, it's going to be the sight of you putting your heart into cooking or your own cooking and enjoying devoting yourself to your craft with your fellow peers. And so if you look at the base of the sentence, it's actually the construction is super simple. It's just basically saying それは noun. That is the sight. But the noun there, sight, fuukei, is actually just being modified by this really, really long clause that is basically its own sentence inside of itself, modifying one word. So yeah, it's simple, but it's complicated. Now getting to the really end of the sentence, right after fuukei we have nan, which is just basically an emphasis. So we're emphasizing the sight as the thing that she wanted to see. Then the da, which is the copula to end the sentence, and then the yo, sentence ending particle, to again have this kind of explanatory note to the sentence, the words.
それは葉山くんが自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさん計算し合う風景なんだよ。
That is going to cover this very long line. Let's read it back, both lines together to form the very giant one. もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。I don't need a research lab anymore because there was something I wanted you to do more than trying to get the equipment and budget back. 私が本当に見ていたかったもの、それは葉山くんが自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさん研鑽し合う風景なんだよ。What I really wanted to see was you putting your heart into your own cooking and enjoying devoting yourself to your craft with your fellow peers.
もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山くんにはしてほしかったことがあるから。私が本当に見ていたかったもの、それは葉山くんが自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさん計算し合う風景なんだよ。
So those are kind of naturalized translations. The literal ones will be a bit different, but hopefully the explanations that we provided that brought us to this point were enough to give you the knowledge of why the literal translation is different from the natural translation. So last thing to do, as always, is to rehash the grammar patterns that we came across. Starting from the beginning, we had the usage of the word nante, which is kind of a vegifier or an emphasizer. We have the negative nai form of the verb iru, which means to need, so not need. We have the particle ya that's used to list nouns, so it translates to and basically. We had the koto, which is used after a verb in its dictionary form to turn it into a noun, so nominalizing verbs there, so as opposed to torimodosu, which means to take back. Torimodosu koto is going to be taking back. After that, we had nanka, which is very similar to nante, very interchangeable in a lot of cases, but slightly different. Look more into that if you're interested. It's not something that we can really go into in this lesson without making it super long. After that, we had yori, which is the grammar pattern that means basically more than. It's used when we're comparing two things. Moving along, we had the te form of a verb plus hoshi, which means to want someone to do something for you. We conjugated it in turn into its past ta form, so hoshikatta. Then we used that to modify a noun because it was acting as a clause to modify the word koto, which means thing. So shite hoshikatta koto turned into thing I wanted you to do. We have the very basic ga aru grammar pattern, which is just the existential statement saying there is something. Kara, which is the conjunction that means because. It was not being used as a conjunction here, but it still had the same meaning. Moving on to the second half of the line, we had the te form of the verb plus iru to mean to be doing that verb, am doing that verb, but we then in turn conjugate into the past form, so was doing that verb. But then we in turn conjugate into the desiderative tai form, which means want to do, and then in turn conjugate that into the past ta form, so wanted to be doing. We had some noun of a noun modifications with jibun no ryori, And 同世代のお友達 we had the te form of the verb 楽しむ which means to have fun. So 楽しんで we had a verbal noun with kensan suru, but we replaced the suru with shiau, which means to do together. And I think that is going to be the end of them. So I don't know how many I just listed. They sure seem like a whole bunch. So hopefully this lesson has taught you a decent amount.
もう研究場所なんて私はいらないよ。機材や予算を取り戻すことなんかより葉山君にはしてほしかったことがあるから。私が本当に見ていたかったもの、それは葉山君が自分の料理を心から楽しんで同世代のお友達とたくさん計算し合う風景なんだよ。葉山君はまだ子供なんだから、ゼミがなくなったことに責任なんか感じなくていいんだからね。
Alright, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode of Anime Line of the Day. Remember, if there were grammar patterns mentioned for this line, they'll be mentioned in the description or the pinned comment below with links to the individual lessons on them. You can also probably find them in the playlist of our complete grammar video series shown on the screen right here alongside our anime playlist. And last but not least, don't forget to try to translate the bonus line we provided. Leave your translation in a comment below. Check out our Patreon, like the video, and subscribe. With all that said and done, see you next time.